How do I know my customers are happy campers? Well, feedback loops. A customer tells me they're happy. How do they tell me they're happy? What's the most dominant way in which we receive feedback? Pardon me? They keep showing up. That is probably the most dominant source of feedback that we take. If I send you a survey, does everybody fill out surveys? So if I'm waiting until the feedback is them calling me up and yelling at me because they didn't get what their needs met, then that basically means that I'm focusing primarily on the vocal minority of people that are displeased with the performance. Because the vast majority of my customers are continuing to purchase. Now, here's some of the problems associated with feedback. I generally hear about it after the fact, so it's a reactive model. It's not a preemptive strike that I can take. It's generally people calling up who have finally hit a threshold where they're so frustrated that they're making the effort and taking the time to make the call, which means the information they're sharing is generally not so objective, it's now somewhat emotional, and it doesn't matter what the answer is, they're probably going to keep coming at me because they're emotional. No, they're not thinking logically, and it doesn't matter what type of reasons or rationale I give them. More often than not, it almost seems like they're just looking for the bribe. Send me something. Compensate me. More than, let's try to figure out how to make this not happen again. So if you had the vocal minority telling you how your process was doing over time, and that is what you as the management team utilized as your means for controlling your process, you're always going to be chasing your tail with emotionally based, biased, incomplete information. So it's a very dangerous way to manage your business. There's something we can do that's different. You already do it, you just may not call it this. And we call it feed forward. A feed forward loop says, look, your process is periodically going to have hiccups. When it has a hiccup, you have the opportunity to forewarn somebody downriver using what we call a feed forward loop or an early warning system, a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator. Something just happened, and because the time between it happening within my sandbox and when it arrives at your doorstep is probably not going to be instantaneous. It could be seconds, could be minutes, could be weeks. If I give you heads up that something's coming downstream, what benefit would that serve to the customer? Why would they like to know that an oops is coming? I can plan for it. The most amazing thing about it is when I'm sitting there and I know that tomorrow afternoon I'm going to be flying, and the airline sends me a text because that's how I've asked for it, and it says, hey, your flight's on time, or the flight gate has changed, or it's been delayed. You give me 2 to 3 hours forewarning, I can now make plans to compensate for it. The airlines that don't tell me are the ones I'm frustrated with. If you give me a trusting relationship with forewarning, I'm actually more willing to fly with certain airlines than other airlines because I trust them to give me timely, valid, accurate information about what my situation is. And they compensate me in terms of making my pain go away, not necessarily by throwing money at me, by basically making sure I'm aware of my circumstance so I don't get to the airport and all of a sudden I'm stuck there at midnight with no flight. That's the relationship I want. I'd rather have a less capable supplier that keeps me informed than one that's great but blindsides me at the last minute on an ongoing basis. Trust is one of the inputs I want.